creepy naked gingerbread people hanging in the halls of a prestigious private middle school, having a funeral for little black dead baby dolls in the name of academic achievement, and teaching middle school kids in Iowa how to properly handle guns. Next on The Dr. Duke Show. Hey everyone, I'm Dr. Duke, and this is The Dr. Duke Show. Every week we cover those stories impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses across the nation. Greetings to all of our listeners, and if you haven't done so, please consider subscribing to the podcast. It is absolutely free of charge. You can subscribe on iTunes, never miss an episode. But let's not waste any more time today. Let's get to the top stories of the day with my partner in crime, Katie Petrick of the Healthy Republic. Actually, she's the real criminal. Where do we begin, Katie?
Well, we start with a question. Does an ID color violate your student privacy rights? And according to claims by the American Civil Liberties Union, yes, it does. So this is a story coming out of Mingus High School in Cottonwood, Arizona, where they provide students with color-coded ID badges. The school uses these badges, they say, for safety reasons. Basically, it breaks into two categories. If you're a lowerclassman, you get a red ID badge. It means you can't leave campus. If you're an upperclassman, you get a gray ID badge, and you can leave campus. Well, what happened was this year, upperclassmen who maybe have fallen behind in their academic studies were then given, instead of being the gray badge, they were given the red badge. So students are saying it's leading to bullying and public shame. And so what happened is we have a couple students who raised the issue at a school board meeting, and the school board didn't do anything about it. And we have junior Jordan Pickett, who said she misses a lot of school because she has anemia, and so she's fallen behind academically, and she was given this red badge. And her and her friend Jonah Ray, who also had this happen to him, say that they are getting the Scarlet Badge. And that's, of course, a reference to the Scarlet Letter with Nathaniel Hawthorne. So it caught the attention of the ACLU, and now they are seeing what they can do about it.
This is really kind of an interesting story. Gives you the barometer how much culture has changed in the last 10 or 15 years. Here you have the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Organization, who has recently came out during the Kavanaugh hearings and argued that due process, giving boys on college campuses, allowing men to have due process rights, constitutional due process rights when it comes to rape allegations, is not something they will support. So the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Organization, no longer supports the right for men and boys to have due process. Now they're worried about colored badges on a high school campus.
They're saying that the Family Educational Rights and Privacy Act, we all call it FERPA, requires schools to maintain privacy of students' educational records. And Marcella Terracino, who's with the ACLU of Arizona, said, we decided to send them, the school, a legal letter letting them know that this is unlawful and it needs to change immediately. But we have a FERPA expert named Frank Lamonti, who's from the University of Florida, and he told the College Fix, he says, unfortunately, the school will likely prevail. Clearly, a school can identify people publicly as junior or sophomore without violating FERPA because your class status is a matter of directory information, and directory information is exempt from FERPA. So if the badges do more than identify your standing as a sophomore or junior, then they're not giving away anything confidential.
This is a stupid story involving stupid incidents. It's uninteresting and boring, but I'll tell you why it matters. It doesn't matter because of the story. It matters because we're really fighting this battle. The ACLU is getting involved over the color badges you have. Meanwhile, the same ACLU has nothing to say about the radical intrusion into your kids' privacy and data that comes from the testing corporations, that comes from the curriculum corporations. Your schools are sharing your kids' private information with entities who are marketing those kids and using and creating databases to track your kids' behavior, their attitudes, their social proclivities, their educational achievements. You have got the house burning down. The complete education house in this country is burning down, and you have the ACLU and related groups complaining that one smoke detector in the back of the burnt down house isn't quite connected to the right size battery. This is how stupid this is. If we had 1/1000th of the leftist outrage about the genuine compromising of our kids' privacy, our kids' academic freedom, our kids' right to an indoctrination-free education, our kids' absolute right to be educated as 8th graders at an 8th grade level, at high school kids at a high school level, to be granted diplomas that actually measure achievement and preparedness for college and career. If we had 1/1000th of the liberal outrage about those injustices, no one would give a rat's rip what color stupid ID badge you're handed.
That is true. Well, we're going to stay in Arizona, where parents whose children attend the Phoenix Country Day School recently discovered that the middle school, which goes down to young as 5th grade. They've been grooming the children with curriculum promoting a transgender and gay agenda. Now, this is a private school that costs anywhere from $20,000 to $25,000 per year, and state legal protections don't apply, so it's not. They can't necessarily opt their kids out of this curriculum. What's happening is the school is getting their curriculum from a website called It's Pronounced Metrosexual.com, which is run by a comedian named Sam Killerman, and he describes himself as a dedicated ally and advocate for social justice. Now, they have these genderbread persons. It's a genderbread character represents all the possible genders. Some of them include cyborg, two-spirit, glitter butch, gender fluid, trigender, stud. I could continue, but I will stop there. Now, the genderbread character is prominently featured on a large bulletin board that is in the hallways of this school. And until recently, the parents had no idea. I don't know if they just didn't go into the school, but they did not walk past this genderbread bulletin board for the students.
We've been saying for many, many years that Common Core and things like it is not Common Core that it is itself necessarily responsible for this, although Common Core and the federalization of education and the ideologically transformative nature of modern education. The new curriculum, the new paradigms are all less about academic achievement and more about sociology and social justice. I'm not the least bit surprised this is happening. We've been saying that the private schools have willfully adopted this. You said that parents can't opt their kids out because it's not public school. Sure they can. Take them out. Find another school, right? You're paying $25,000, and that to me is part of the story, perhaps the biggest part of the story. That at these private schools, moms, where you're pulling your kids out of these ridiculous public schools, and good for you for having the recognition that public schools aren't going to get it done for your kids. But you put them in the private schools, you better be, and that includes Catholic schools or Christian schools, you better make sure you know what's going on with the curriculum. Over the last 7 years of giving my Common Core talks across the country, I've met thousands of moms and dads who have said the same thing to me. We pulled our kids out of that public school because of all the gender and the sociology and the ideology, put them in a $30,000 a year private school, and these moms did their homework. When we sat down with the principal before we plopped down our money, the principal guaranteed us there would never be Common Core in this school. And then 6 months later, the kids are bringing home textbooks that are all Common Core compliant. So the moral of the story is, education is at a crisis in this country. If you think it's just a public school problem, if you think you live in rural Indiana and you think this is just a Chicago problem or a big city problem or a red state problem, the entire premise of American education has been undermined. The purpose of the schools is social indoctrination, conformity. The purpose of the schools is to create willing and malleable young minds that can be moved certain ways. We're not terribly interested if they can read at high levels or do math at high levels. We want your kids as grist for our progressive engineering mill. So if you're going to have the foresight, Mom, to put your kid in a private school, not only must you talk to the principal before you put them in, they're guarantees and promises that they're going to be Common Core free, that they're going to be ideological free, that they're going to at least have the decency for $25,000 a year, to have the decency to call you and let you know that they're going to start gingerbreading your kids. And Mike, throw that gingerbread person up again. Excuse me, screw it, gingerbread man. Throw the gingerbread man up again on the screen.
A genderbread.
No, it's not. It's a gingerbread man. It's a gingerbread. Give me the close-up. It's a gingerbread man who has had a brain, a heart, and a pubic area circled on the screen. If you take a look at the image there, the thing that's remarkable to me about this is how juvenile this is. I realize that you're trying to identify for children about all of these complicated transgender stuff, right? You're trying to convince middle schoolers as young as 11 or 12 that there are 170 different genders. But look at how dumb it is. This is the same schools that are telling little kids in kindergarten and first and second grade that they must use terms like penis and vagina. You know, they must, at very young ages, become biologically sophisticated. We got to teach them about condoms and birth controls in middle school. And yet, in the stupid picture here, you've got identity linked to a picture of a brain, right?
A colored brain, of
a
course.
Colored
it has to be
brain.
Rainbow.
And then you've got attraction linked to a heart. You're literally suggesting to kids that a pumping muscle in your chest somehow is where attraction's located, right? And at the pubic area, you've got a big circle with the male symbol, the female symbol, and I guess that could be what? The male-female symbol? Got news for you. There is no human alive whose crotch has three biological sexualities attached to it. So for all this, it just shows you the hypocrisy of the progressives. On the one hand, we're going to adultify your kids. We're going to hammer your kids with things way above them, frightening sexuality issues to kids really young. On the other hand, we're going to treat them like babies when we show them pictures because it's easier for them to understand it that way. Get over yourself. This whole thing is, again, the word for the day is going to be a scam. And mom and dad, I'm sorry to break this to you. You're paying a lot of money for a private Christian school, a private college prep school. You've got to keep up with them 2 or 3 times a year. My advice to you is every time you get a report card, if that's twice a semester, once every semester, or once every 4 quarters, when you get grades or you get a notification of grades from your kids, that's when you should turn around and do a report card on your school. Check with your kids, find out the books that they're reading, take a stop by the school, walk through the hallways on the way to go talk to your kids' teachers or the principal, see what's hanging in the hallways. If you took your kids and put them in private schools because you want them to get an ideological free education, one that's going to prepare them well for life, and that one's going to be free of all of this sociological bullying, you got to pay closer attention.
I think you have to pay even closer attention to that, because what happened in this story is they noticed, some of the parents noticed in the past couple of weeks now, they actually pulled that bulletin board down. No parents were notified about that either. So they don't know whether this is a good thing or a bad thing. Did they pull the curriculum, or are they hiding it even more? And that's the question. And that's why parents need to ask their kids on a daily basis, hey, what'd you learn today? And you know the students will say, oh, not much. But you have to be active parents. You can't just trust the
That's
teachers.
great advice. Do not trust your schools. Don't. You have reached the point now where you can't trust them. They work for you. Look, the public schools work for you because you pay the taxes, right? Public school is public for a reason. It belongs to you. It belongs to us. Private schools even more belong to you because you're paying much bigger fees to send your kids there. You can't trust what they tell you. That's the problem. Good, they pulled a bulletin board down because somebody noticed it, but I promise you, they pulled the bulletin board, they didn't pull out the curriculum. Until somebody goes in and looks at the textbooks and reports back to teachers what my kid came home and told me exactly what you said in class today about gingerbread genitalia, it's not going to change. And I'll tell you this, you have no control over the public schools, but I promise you, if 15 moms threatened to pull out $25,000 a year, $400,000 worth of money from that private school, they will start to listen to you.
They will. All right, this next story, I'm just going to read the headline because it shocked me. School principal throws mock funeral with dead baby to motivate teachers. Something is wrong with you. This is coming from Memphis, Tennessee at the Get Well Elementary School, where Principal Tina Smith wanted to motivate her teachers to work harder after getting the 2015 public school review data showing the school scored in the bottom 50% in math and reading.
Wait. Is that a black baby doll? It's a black baby doll.
Maybe it identifies as a black baby doll.
So on top of all of this, the principal chose a dead African-American baby.
She decided that a meeting with a funeral motif would show teachers they were burying the data and would demonstrate the wasted potential of students. At the Friday meeting, while a song played with the lyric, "Children are our future,"
I believe the children are our future. Kill them well and let them be pulled apart. Planned Parenthood, you are looking after them.
Okay, Whitney, thank you. Teachers were told to act as though they were in mourning. There was a tiny casket in the middle of the room with a, quote, dead baby doll inside, surrounded by flowers and pamphlets that read, "In loving memory of Madam 2 to 3 years behind."
Oh, and by the way, given how public schools educate kids, the real tragedy is that dead baby wouldn't be able to read those pamphlets. You are putting a dead black baby in a mock coffin, and you're mocking it with literature that you haven't trained it how to read. Oh my God, this is the stupidest thing I've ever heard. And so we find ourselves in a situation now. Here you have a principal who is angry that, like every other principal in the country, kids are performing way below the way they should be at grade level. Do they dare to question the superintendents? Do they dare to question the pedagogy? Do these teachers dare to walk out in protest until we get actual learning objectives and pedagogy that's academic-based and not ideology-based? No, we do not get that. What do we get? We get a stifled black baby in a cardboard Kleenex box with pamphlets he or she can't read because she's 3 years behind, and you're going to shame your teachers with this mock funeral in teaching the kids better somehow? Staggering.
Yeah, Keith Williams is the interim director of the Memphis-Shelby County Educational Association, and he said that the meeting was offensive. She, referring to Tina, has insulted those people. That is an insult. To invite me back to school the first day for a funeral. He said that some of the teachers who had recently had challenges with childbirth were overwhelmed and just left the room, and they actually were given time off because of it.
And that is where the progressives come down. The only thing wrong with this is that women who have suffered miscarriages could have, otherwise this is hunky-dory, right? If you could have found a way to do this very thing without offending the miscarriage mommies, well, then this would have been all right. Now do you understand why your kids don't get an education? Somebody thought this was a good idea. Everybody in the circle, everybody who's criticizing the principal at that school recognized that at every level they have failed the kids. Their response is not to ask for change. We got Los Angeles teachers are about to walk out of classrooms in protest of money. They're about to abandon their classrooms because they think they deserve more money. As we've seen time and time again on the show, Los Angeles, California has some of the lowest graduation rates in the history of American education. We have African-American kids in places like Los Angeles, California, 18-year-olds who are functionally illiterate. Do the teachers walk out for that? No. Do they bury dead Compton baby dolls for that? No. They are happy with that. They're not bothered by that. They don't believe for one second that their inability and oftentimes their unwillingness to educate these kids should have any financial or career problems whatsoever. We're going to walk out on those kids and demand more money. How come you're not walking out and demanding real curriculum? How come you're not walking out and demanding that these kids be given the tools they need and the teachers they need, and all that other extraneous stuff that you're spending all this money on goes away to focus on those kids' education? But the fact that you walk out for money and for nothing else doesn't speak very well of you.
All right, let's go on to campus now, where at American University, they're going to host a seminar that teaches faculty not to judge the quality of someone's writing when they're grading an essay. So on February 1st, Esau Inu, I think is how you pronounce his name, a University of Washington Tacoma professor of, get this, interdisciplinary arts and sciences, and the director of university writing and the Writing Center, he's going to be at American University leading the seminar titled Grading Ain't Just Grading, Rethinking Writing Assessment Ecologies Towards Anti-Racist Ends.
Now, looking at that name, it looks like a Hawaiian or perhaps a Japanese name. Throw that up again there, Mike, though. So I think it's Asao Inoue. We had a former Senator Inoue, right? So, but, you know, the funny thing about this story is that American University is about 15 years behind the times. As a professor of English, I remember at my university when I was a graduate student being told that while I was a TA, while I was teaching freshman composition for the faculty, that we shouldn't really be grading grammar and syntax and punctuation and capitalization. This is an old thing. This has got like 20, 25-year history. And this is, I had a friend who teaches at Purdue University, is where I went as well. He told me a couple of years ago that as a TA himself, he was talking to some of the other teachers, the young teachers, the graduate students, and he said, there seems to be, he says, this real problem with me teaching grammar. And they looked him in the eye and they said to him, don't you know that the purpose of freshman writing classes, all mandatory, by the way. Every college in this country requires freshman writing. Freshmen in English class have to take writing on college campuses their first year. And he looked him in the eye and said, don't you understand that the purpose of freshman writing classes is not to teach them how to write. It's to make them socially aware. And so, consequently, we English professors are not grading for grammar because grammar's racist, right? Why does somebody who speaks Ebonics not get the same credit as somebody who speaks the King's English? Punctuation in this day and age, deciding full stops and partial stops, is also a microaggression. Capitalization. There's actually some African-American theorists who have made this argument. Capitalizing the first letter of every sentence and keeping all the secondary letters small is a form of racist exploitation. Why does the initial letter get capitalized and not the others? And so we're moving that way. So in other words, freshman writing, college writing in general, is, and I can attest to this at my universities, it's much less about correctness and beauty and prose and conciseness and conveying ideas. We teach writing to teach social justice.
Well, I'm going to have to stop you because you said freshman for Purdue, and that's offensive, that's sexist. And the online writing lab for Purdue actually said that you're not supposed to use man at all anymore. If you want to watch that, I did a Healthy Republic segment on that last year.
Is it mandatory that we don't use the word man?
And you can manage to use any other
So, yeah, I mean,
words.
how do we manage that? Yeah, one of the things I like to do, if I may take a moment here, anecdotally, whenever I get hit with this crap in my classrooms, that you should use the word humanity, not mankind, I immediately write the word humanity on the blackboard, and then I circle the word man inside of it, and I accuse them of being bigots. And then they say, well, then use the word person or personhood. And I immediately go to the blackboard and I write the word person on the board and I circle the word son inside of it and watch them pee their pants.
All right, well, back to this for a second, because I want people to know that this is how these types of seminars work. What's happening is there's going to be 4 sessions for this man's seminar, and it's going to start... Whatever. It's going to start with everyone in the room talking about how language standards kill our students, and grading ain't just grading.
Wait, listen to what you said. Language standards, holding people accountable to grammar and correctness, now murders people. People die because you use the Oxford comma now. That's what you're being told.
All right, and so listen to all the buzzwords that are in this description. So this little seminar will argue against the use of conventional standards in college courses that grade student writing by single standards. This professor will discuss the ways that white language supremacy is perpetuated in college classrooms despite the better intentions of faculty, particularly through the practices of grading writing. So everyone is going to hear about this, and they're going to basically follow the problem-posing practice, which engages students with how judgments are formed and how those judgments use a set of white racial habits of language, no matter who the reader is. So for this session, you have to bring an essay that you've graded of a student's work, and they're going to do an activity to understand their own ways of judging student writing.
So, white language supremacy is a thing, and it kills. Literally, not figuratively, not pretend, not metaphorically, your college professors are now arguing that the correct use of the English language is both a form of murder and it is a form of white linguistic supremacy. So in other words, the more incoherent a student is, the more illiterate a student is, the more a student is unable to write a coherent, meaningful sentence, the more woke, liberated, and progressive they are. Pretty soon, we're going to give PhDs for sitting in the street and dribbling your lips. The dumber you are, according to this system, the more bold you are for not participating in it. The less you know, the more you have rejected racist white knowledge and empirical science. So in other words, not going to college should give you a PhD. Not trying to learn anything should give you the highest level of education possible. You cannot make this stuff up.
You can't. But you can become part of the victimhood culture that we've been talking about. We have 2 sociologists who actually have done some form of good. 2 sociologists, never thought it would happen. But we have 2 of them who have written on the rise of the victimhood culture, and now their work is being viewed as a microaggression. If you don't know what microaggression is, it can be verbal, nonverbal, environmental, behavioral. It's some sort of action, whether it's intentional or unintentional, that's viewed as being hostile or mean or derogatory in some way to a group membership. So basically, it's every time you call me a hobbit. That's a microaggression to me. So either it's unknowingly or unintentionally offending someone, and it happens all the time.
But you're not offended by a hobbit.
No, that's true.
You kind of like hobbits. You got hobbits all over your office.
I do.
It's kind of creepy, actually.
So
that's fake outrage right there.
It is fake outrage.
But get right back.
But now I'm offended.
That I pointed it out.
No.
Now go back to that story. Throw the headline up again, Mike. 2 sociologists detail the rise of victimhood culture. You've got 2 sociologists who have made the argument that we are perpetuating a victim culture on college campus. We are ennobling victimhood. We are arguing that victims, regardless of their behavior or attitudes, are innocent, heroic people. And so consequently, the fact that these sociologists told the truth, because I'm on campus enough to see it, the only way you get taken seriously on a college campus is if you have a grievance, if you argue that somebody has harassed you. It's why it's impossible to be a white male victim, because you're always going to be guilty of something. And yet now these 2 sociologists had the cojones to go ahead and argue this case, and that itself now has been called a microaggression.
Yeah, so it started back in 2014, and I want to give the cojones some credit here. It's Bradley Campbell, who's at Cal State in Los Angeles, and Jason Manning.
So it is two guys.
2 dudes.
We have a sausage festival here, don't we?
We
do.
And they're probably white. All right, Jason Manning's from West Virginia University. So they published an article called Microaggression in Moral Cultures, and that was a microaggression. And so they actually just released a book, though, and it's called The Rise of Victimhood Culture. And they have a blog that they maintain, so you can always get more information about it. And they didn't coin this term victimhood culture, but to them, and you've said this, they basically classified it as a moral culture distinct from honor and dignity cultures. Now, Campbell said in an op-ed on Free Speech, he said, in honor cultures, men want to appear formidable. A reputation for bravery, for being willing and capable of handling conflicts through violence is important. In dignity cultures, though, people have worth regardless of their reputations, because an insult doesn't take away your worth, your dignity. You can ignore others' insults. But this new culture of victimhood combines sensitivity to slight with appeal to authority. Those who embrace it see themselves as fighting oppression, and even minor offenses can be worthy of attention and action. Slights, insults, and sometimes even arguments or evidence might further victimize an oppressed group, and authorities must deal with them. And yep.
This is not, again, this is not new. It's like the story we had before. This is 25 years ago they were doing this, let's use English class for social justice. With all due respect to the sociologist, thank you for doing this. And I'm not surprised you're being attacked, but this is not new. The students I deal with at the university, I taught at 7 different universities. It's been the same thing at every one of them. We actually have undergraduates who are jealous of the victims. That anybody who's they're like, these are kids. When they see somebody getting a pat on the head, when they see somebody getting a cookie for their tears, they want it. And so these kids have figured out that even though they may not fit the victim profile, they may be white or they may be male or they may be white and female, they've learned, they've imbibed how to talk the language of victims. And they're demanding their cookie too. It's a cookie culture.
Yeah, well, Manning said that being recognized as a victim conveys social status.
There you go.
One deserves special consideration and assistance. Those deemed privileged are expected to confess their moral stain and apologize for it. It's those who are demeaned, and this is treated as okay.
Right. So what they demand is their utterly subjective feelings have to be treated as if they're noble, heroic, intellectual things. Other people who aren't them want to be like them. And anybody they disagree with shouldn't argue, shouldn't defend, shouldn't explain, shouldn't have a rational conversation. They ought to just confess. Isn't it amazing how juvenilely religious so much of this progressive Kant has become? It's not about actually overcoming or doing anything. It's the odd self-flagellation. It's the virtue signaling that comes from the Pharisees, right? Staggering down to the poor box, being supported by their friends to drop a couple of shekels in so everybody cheers them. This is what you got going on in college campuses. It's empty, it's stupid, it's hypocritical.
And it's what we have going on at Georgetown University, which has a new plan called ACTION. And that's an acronym, ACTION. It's a 6-step program to battle these microaggressions from those microaggressors. They've partnered with their Council on Diversity Affairs. So that says it all.
Right there. You have a Council on Diversity Affairs calling the shots at a putatively Catholic institution. Yeah.
All right. The website says that this campaign will work towards developing a response strategy before a microaggression appears and building efficacy in faculty, staff, students, and trainees who must respond in real time to these microaggressors. And I just can't. Captain Planet, unite!
So
Earth, fire.
They're not going to wait until a microaggression occurs and then pounce like ninjas. They're going to pounce beforehand. They're going to find ways to stifle microaggressions, and I can tell you what that means. If you're male, you will be counseled before you ever set foot on campus or before you ever enter your first classroom about all the things you dare not say. If you are heterosexual, you're going to be told from the moment you are accepted to that school, these are all the things you will not say, right? So what becomes a reactionary overreaction to some silly thing somebody says now becomes preemptive censorship and bullying at a Roman Catholic school, no less. Here's a question, guys, at the Roman Catholic school, Georgetown. Is it a microaggression or a macroaggression or just something you're going to ignore, the molestation of young boys by the priesthood? Is that something you're going to take care of? It's funny to me when we think about all that goes on in these places that you've got a pope in Rome, right? You got a pope in Rome who is papering over one of the worst sexual abuse offenses in modern history and lecturing us on our unwillingness to have open borders. Georgetown, frankly, you are a joke. This is the same Georgetown that a few years ago was cracking down on Christian expression while building Muslim prayer rooms, right? We made that controversy. This is the same Georgetown University that was willing to cover a statue of Christ so that a pro-abort Obama could speak there. You are a joke.
All right. They also have the bias reduction and improvement coaching team, which is called BRIC.
Brick.
Makes sense.
Thick,
Yeah.
Remember Jethro Tull's song, Thick as a Brick? Thick as a brick, about preachers, priests, and teachers. There you go. Thick as a brick, baby. You're thick as a brick. Tell me about Brick at Georgetown.
Okay, so they are empowering faculty and staff coaches across the Georgetown University Medical Center to provide dialogues around unconscious and conscious bias awareness and reduction. And they're saying they're encouraging their staff members anonymously, if you'd like to report these instances of bias.
Anonymous snitches, too. Wow, isn't that great?
What do snitches get?
Preemptive bullying, censorship, and mind control. Delving into your subconscious to reprogramming you, and then you have anonymous snitches. Is this Germany? Is this the east side of the Berlin Wall, right? Is this what we've got now? We've got the Soviet commissar snitch culture taking place at Georgetown University. $20,000, $30,000, $40,000, $50,000 a year, Mom and Dad, to send your kids to that Catholic school. And I know, Mom and Dad, you're sending them to Georgetown because you want them to propagate the faith. I can pretty much guarantee you, the one thing that your kids aren't going to get at Georgetown is the faith.
Yeah, and they're probably not going to be able to figure out that they're supposed to be adults because we have a professor who found that students are delaying adulthood. Now, in your growing up here, when did adulthood start? At what age did you start being an adult?
I remember being, as most kids, I remember wanting to be an adult when I was 13 and 14. I knew that 16 conveyed significant aspects of adulthood, like driving a car. And I knew that 18 brought more. And I was, by 21, my adulthood was already 4 years in the making.
Absolutely. However, Rebecca Fitzsimmons, Georgia Tech University English professor, who is teaching, she actually taught the course back in fall of 2016 called Adulting, Coming of Age in 21st Century America.
Stop. We got to stop you.
I know.
As an English
I was going to
professor,
stop.
As an English professor, when you send your kid to college to take English classes, you're thinking Shakespeare, you're thinking Milton, you're thinking romantic poets, you're thinking women writers of the 19th century. You're not thinking that you're paying $40,000 a year to send your kid to a college campus to take an English course on adulting. Right?
Coming of age in the 21st century America. Yeah, I wondered the same thing. How is this at all English related? But I digress. In class, students used digital media and historical text to define what it means to be an adult in today's world. And Fitzsimmons learned early on that her baby millennials didn't consider themselves adults. That gave way to one of the main themes of the class, that adulthood starts later for young people today than ever before. She actually had students write essays about the milestones they thought marked a coming of age, and she was quite surprised by the results. She said the vast majority of them said they thought it was when you had kids of your own. It wasn't graduated from college. It wasn't getting your first job. I joked with them that my definition was you're paying your own rent, you have your health insurance. That's what I think being an adult is. But they said, once you have kids, that's it. You're definitely an adult.
And as what they don't tell you is that millennials are having kids later and later, right? So we're pushing this into the 30s. Go ahead.
Yeah, the CDC actually has found that women in their 30s are having kids at the highest rate in more than 50 years. And the birth rate at the age from 15 to 24 nationwide has declined. Now, I'm not even going to talk Planned Parenthood or abortion on that one. We'll move on. But they also found the marriage rate for 18 to 30, only 20% of that age range, whereas Gen Xers by the age 18 to 30, 32% had been married and 40% of baby boomers.
I think we have found the theme for our show. The theme is that this is not new. Do we really need this now? We need this highly accredited social researcher, this English professor, to tell us this on the basis of one class she took? Look, when Obamacare was passed 10 years ago, under the premise that you're 27, you're still a child, that's part of what this is. And look, the stupidity of this is obvious, right? The more we delay adulthood, the more we push off responsibility, the goofier and the more snowflake the generation's going to be. We know that. Here's my problem. The same progressives that are acceding to this, right? The same progressive educators and establishment that are now saying it's okay. It's okay. You can be a baby. You're a 24-year-old college kid, and we're providing you safe spaces and snowflake-free zones. We're giving you coloring books and therapy puppies and aromatherapy to help you get over hard classes. We think we're doing you a favor here, but here's my problem with this. It's not just that we are infantilizing adults well into their mid-30s and even their 40s. We're also, in the same progressive way, we're taking little kids and we're treating them like adults. We have no problem burdening a 7-year-old with gender. We have no problem trying to convince generations of 7-year-olds that gender is completely malleable, and if they don't agree with what's in their diaper, then they can just change it. We're giving kids at low middle school levels complicated global warming arguments that they can't possibly process. What is they calling for in the wake of the Parkland shooters, the progressives, right? Let's lower the voting age to 16. Let's let 16-year-olds vote in federal elections so they have representation. If their schools are being shot up, we can get the average 16-year-old to vote out the Second Amendment. So when it comes to progressive wish lists, we want kids adultified at lower and lower grades. When it comes to things like self-reliance, liberty, financial security, moral responsibility, personal accountability, we want them children into their 50s. That's the Democrat voter right there. Highly entitled to all the benefits of sex adulthood and none of the responsibilities. Government will take care of it for them. Do you understand now, at least, I'm sure you do, how education is contributing to the hijacking of responsible American life, right? We are breeding a generation here who knows only dependence. That's all they know. It's all they are aware of. They can't take care of themselves, and worse still, they don't feel like they have to. It is their prerogative to be children living in their mother's basement until their late to mid-30s and 40s. This is the generation that is going to change the relationship between the citizen to government. They already are, and not in a good way.
And you say dependence, and that's a microaggression. I view that as a microaggression. What you should say is that they are just so woke. And remember last week you ranted on about the woke exam, and yes. we said, hey, listeners, please send in your suggestions.
Did we get some?
We got
some.
Now,
the setback, we asked you, right, woke is one of these words on college campuses, W-O-K-E. So we wanted to come up with an acronym. What would W-O-K-E stand for that would suggest the stupidity and venality of this empty slogan that we get in our college campuses?
Yeah.
So we've got people writing in?
Yeah, and I hope you came up with one yourself. We had Paula, who says woke is why oppression kills equality.
Oh, that's good. Why oppression kills equality.
All right. Sherry says war on kids' education.
Ooh, that's good.
I like that one. That was one of my
War on kids' education.
All right. Jana says we only know emotion.
Ooh, that's pretty
They're
good.
so woke.
I like that one.
We only know emotion.
We only know emotion. And you're giving the names of these people.
Yeah.
Good. Give them credit out there for that. What else we got?
And then we have the final submission that I picked from was Ninja Babina. I hope I pronounced that right. Willingly or knowingly educating lowly. And there's a caveat here. I guess that would be wokel, sort of like yokel, if the shoe fits.
Well, and based on the fact that actual spelling is a demerit, adding an L to woke, making it a nonsense word, would actually be a form of absolute defiance.
All right, so our final story today is coming from Iowa, where we have some Iowa schools who are starting a firearms training class this spring for middle schoolers. Students from the Clarksville and North Butler school districts will learn how to safely handle a gun during a Phi-Ed course focusing on hunter safety. Joel Foster, he's the superintendent for both the districts, said that he hoped the course will prepare students to react in the event of an active shooter situation. He says, we've done everything to make students and district employees as safe as possible at school with cameras, locks. We would like them to be able to deal with a situation that comes up. And during the course, the students are going to use inoperable guns with replica ammunition. They're going to learn how to load and unload ammunition and hold and care for firearms. They're also going to learn how to safely carry a gun and how to recognize when a firearm is loaded. And yes, parents can opt out of this if they choose.
So they'll let the kids opt out of the only sober program pretty much in any public school system anywhere.
Yes.
This is great news. I mean, and we need to do more of this. If the left is absolutely serious that they're terrified of guns, if the left is absolutely serious that they want to find a way to empower kids in these circumstances, it's not about giving them the vote. It's not about, and it's, how many stories have we had over the last couple of weeks about woke high school kids moaning that there are cops in the schools? Chasing the cops out. So if you're going to drive out the cops in the name of liberalism, because cops are all apparently killers of minorities, so there can be no cops on high school or college campuses, then all the more reason you should teach your high school and college and your middle school kids how to handle firearms. This is a fantastic program. And I object a little bit to the argument that the purpose of this is solely defensive. Like, you know, this is something that we do when we're threatened. Guns are empowering in this way, right? Letting kids know how they work, what they can expect from them, how to handle them. if necessary, how to point them and use them. I think this is a remarkably empowering thing. It's a combat. It is an antidote to the kind of juvenile, millennial, extended hyper childhood we just talked about. This is a way of giving kids serious responsibility. It's like, and I will say this with all of this responsibility stuff. If we're going to let kids be kids into the 30s, if you're a child until you're 35 years old, then you shouldn't be able to drive till you're 35 years old. No way. And you shouldn't be able to get married until you're 35 years old. And you shouldn't be able to, what else? Have a drink. Have a drink. Shouldn't be able to drink until you're 35 years old, right? I mean,
vote.
if you shouldn't have to be able to have it both ways. If you're going to insist on extending childhood, then the benefits of adulthood should be withheld from you until you decide to embrace them. And if you want to be a child into your 30s and 40s, we should treat you like one, not let you do certain things.
So I can't do anything now. Is that what you're telling me? You're gonna have to. Someone's gonna have to drive me to work. I can't. I'm already married. I can't do that anymore.
The bias against hobbits, it's terrible.
It's awful. All right, well, I want everyone to know that this course is going to be about 10 hours of instruction. It's going to last about a week in the gym class, and it's actually going to be taught by someone who's qualified, unlike most of our teachers teaching about subjects they know nothing about. It's going to be taught by a naturalist from the Butler County Conservation Board. And so this is going to be required for all 7th and 8th grade students, and then if high schoolers want to take it, they're going to have the option of taking a similar hunter safety course during the evening.
Absolutely great. So
cool.
one of the comment I have to make about this is it is a great piece of advice. It's a great piece of news. I think the thing that really interests me about this is that moms and dads are going to be notified that they can opt out. We will not notify them that their kids are getting sexualized. We will not notify them that their kids are learning about anal intercourse in middle school. We're not going to notify them that we've got oddly shaped genderbread people posters hanging in the hallway. We're not going to contact you about how we're indoctrinating your kid in terms of progressive social values. We're not going to tell you that we're doing social and psychological data gathering on your kids. We're not going to tell you any of this stuff, but we will notify you that your children may be trained in how to use guns. Well, I suppose parental notification is something.
Yeah, and so far the superintendent said all positive. Shocker.
It is Iowa.
It is Iowa. This is true. I will give it to Iowa. All right. So make sure you head over to drdukeshow.com and subscribe to the podcast version of today's show. And we really enjoyed getting the comments back and searching through them, sifting through all the different ones to pick our favorite woke comments. So please continue to give us comments. If you want to leave us a nice review on iTunes, that would also be delightful.
And that does it for us this week on the Dr. Duke Show. If you like what you heard, please share this podcast with your friends. For Freedom Project, I'm Dr. Duke. She's Gollum. And we'll see you next time.